Hi, everybody. I want to talk to you tonight about how to approach a rhetorical on demand. Some of us are still really struggling with this, and I know that it can be kind of frustrating, but if you're a math kind of person or if you're a puzzle kind of person, sometimes it helps to approach it in more of a methodical kind of way, like you would in solving a puzzle or Rubik's Cube or a complex math problem. There's a process to this, and you are perfectly capable of mastering it. It just takes some practice. So we're going to talk through how we can better approach these. So the first thing is to read the prompt. Really look at it and look to see what is it asking me to do. Okay, underline any of the keywords that pop out to you as you're reading that. They're probably things like analyze, demonstrate, something like that. In the past few years, the key things that they're asking you to do is to identify the author's purpose and also to identify the key devices, rhetorical devices that the author is using when constructing that argument. Next, you're going to want to brush up on some good transitional terms. If you don't know any, maybe your tool belt's a little light right now, find some good ones, Google them, prepare for this. This is something that you can do without a lot of serious preparation, but it can really make the difference in terms of spicing up your writing a little bit to show some sophistication. Make sure that the concepts of ethos, logos, and pathos are solid in your mind, and note that these are called appeals. They are not the devices that the prompt may ask you to identify. They are appeals, not devices. So, for example, you could write, the author uses playful diction such as whimsical and fanciful to appeal to the reader's sense of pathos, setting a lighthearted tone. In that sentence, both diction and tone are the devices that they're going for. Pathos is an appeal, so those devices add to the appeal, but the appeal itself is not one of the devices that the prompt is asking you to identify. It will help with the overall coherence of your essay to add in the ethos, logos, pathos, but those are not the devices. They're expecting you to cover the appeals. The devices are how they actually accomplish that. All right, before beginning, for about 5 to 10 minutes out of the 40, read the entire excerpt, look for clues, tone, attitude, bias that might be coming through from the author. It's never going to be informative. The author is never simply informing you on a situation. The author is trying to get you to think, do, or believe something. So your job is to try to figure out, what is it? Okay, what does this author want me to think, do, or believe by the time I'm done reading whatever this passage is, whether it was a speech or a letter or an essay in a magazine. They want to persuade you of something, and your job is to figure out what that is. Okay, next you're going to circle any keywords that help determine the author's purpose as you're reading. Okay, so that will help you then when you're going through it and you're writing your essay, you're walking through it chronologically, then you can see what you've already identified as being important in your first run through. Then underline any key phrases that you are likely to insert into your own essay. So I don't recommend that you write out entire sentences to plop into your essay because it's time consuming and it's really unnecessary. The reader is going to be very familiar with the passage itself. So if you're giving enough to give context of what it is that you're referring to, you don't need to write in entire sentences. You can save yourself some time and some space by just choosing keywords, either just a few words of a phrase, or if you're going to use ellipsis dots, the dot, dot, dot in the center to show that you've left some parts out, but that you include it in your thought. That's fine as well, but don't write out entire sentences. Next, mark the evidence of the ethos, logos, and pathos with just big letters, ELP, as you go through. Don't waste the time writing that fully out so that you can really save time in your preparation. For the outline, this will take about 5 minutes out of the 40. You have to think about how you're going to do this because you want to make sure you don't run out of time, and you've got to have a concluding thought. So if you don't take the time to kind of map out an outline ahead of time, you might run short on time, and then you're going to leave your reader hanging, which is never a good impression. So In the intro, must have is the author's purpose. What is it? State it clearly. Don't beat around the bush or assume that the reader knows what it is that you're talking about because it's obvious, because it's Gandhi or it's MLK. You have to state it absolutely 100%. What is the author's purpose? What does the author want us to think, do, or believe? Skip the I thinks, okay? We know that you think it because you're writing it down on your paper and your name's on the top. So skip all of the I voice in your essay. Second, decide on your organizational strategy. I strongly recommend that you use with a chronological approach where you walk through the entire essay and comment throughout the entire essay so you don't miss anything. Next, add where the ethos, logos, and pathos will go. And then choose your transitional terms for starting each paragraph. Now, obviously, you've got devices that you've identified that go into that introduction. So you're going to need to think about, as I'm walking through this essay, where are those devices prominently popping out? And then as you're walking through it chronologically, you're pointing out evidence of that as you go. All right, when you start the on-demand time, state the title of the work and the author in the opening paragraph. Try to move that. Hold on one second. Underline the title of a book. For articles, you use quotation marks. Okay, so it's kind of a sign of an educated person if you use the correct way of noting whether it's a book or an article. If you use quotation marks and it's a book title, it's just kind of a signal of an immature writer. And so you want to make sure that as a minimum, you know how to properly cite the types of sources that there might be. For writing time, number 2, use good transitions between your paragraphs. First, second, lastly, not very impressive. Also, make sure that they work. If you use a for example at the start of a paragraph, you haven't mentioned something in the beginning that goes right before it that you're giving an example of. If it's a new topic, it's not going to be a furthermore, right? It's going to be something entirely new. You need a topic sentence that really sets off, this is what I'm about to write about in this paragraph, okay? And so don't just put arbitrary transitional terms in there if they don't make sense. All right, clean up your contractions. Although I will say that this is kind of a minor thing and I would not spend a lot of time worrying about it as you go through. If you have time to clean it up in the end, if you're in the habit now of not using them, that will be helpful, but this is not a game changer, I don't think, for your essay, so don't stress about this as much as some other things. Number 4, get rid of your I voice. I mentioned already, just state it like it's a fact and back it up with evidence from the text. Next, cite specific lines. When referencing the piece, there's no need to cite page numbers. If there are numbered lines of an essay or paragraphs that are numbered, then use those numbers that they give you, but don't ever spend time counting anything out because that's just a waste of your time. If there are numbers available, they'll put them on there, they'll expect you to use them, but they would never expect you to count something out on your own. Next, connect your quotes with your own words. Don't just plop them into your paper. It's best if you integrate them into your own sentences, actually, so that they make sense. You're using examples, just keywords or phrases that are popping out that are examples of what it is that you're pointing out, rather than putting entire quotations in there. The danger of putting a whole quotation in there, number 1, you're going to waste time, but number 2, is very likely that you're just plopping it in. You're not fully explaining why you put it there if you put the whole sentence in. All right, next, open up your literary toolbox and get to work. Look for techniques the author uses for a specific effect. Is there lots of repetition? Point it out and then tell why the author used it. What purpose did it serve? Were there rhetorical questions? What purpose did they serve? Call to action, the I voice, a collective we, a direct you. Is there anaphora? There's all kinds of things that might pop out as you're reading. I caution you, do not try to identify everything that the author has used. Pick maybe 3, maybe 5 if you're really ambitious. things that the author is doing, I would recommend settling on 3 and really supporting them, really finding examples throughout the essay of when the author is doing this and what effect did it have on the ethos, logos, and pathos. The fact that the author has chosen those, really think about what effect they've had. If you start spewing terms at the reader, it's very likely that you're not developing your argument. Okay, you're not developing enough support to say how that technique has advanced the author's purpose. If you choose maybe 3, you've got some time to really develop that, to focus on the use of repetition, or to focus on what impact did it have to have these rhetorical questions at the end of the essay, or what impact did it have that the author was using kind of references to God and almost like a homily type approach to making an impression on the reader, a sense of pathos that's evoking a sense of their Christian values maybe. There's all kinds of things that you can point out, but you want to make sure that you really develop it. Try to give more than one example from the essay, if possible, of that technique or that device at play. Otherwise, it's just kind of a random side note. So really ask yourself, what are the maybe 3 things that this author has done to really work on getting under our skin? What did they do? Was it repetition? Was it call to action? What was it that this author was particularly good at doing to try to get under our skin and appeal to us in some kind of a way? Then you develop those, and don't bother with all the extra stuff. Just focus on the 3 that you really are going to develop well. Overall, make sure that what you write is analysis, not just plot summary. Explain why the writer uses specific words and techniques, and how does it impact the reader. So focus on the author's purpose. Your job is not to analyze your job is not to summarize or interpret what the author has said. Okay, obviously you have to have a good understanding of what the author says, but your job is not to basically interpret it like it's a foreign language. Okay, the assumption is the reader understands the passage as well, and your job is to write about how the author has constructed an argument and use devices to do that. So be careful. If you look at an entire paragraph of what you've written and you can't find a device in there that you are specifically pointing out, then you are probably getting caught up in just interpreting rather than analyzing. Okay, it's really important that you focus on those devices that are helping to establish the author's purpose and construct the argument. A lot of people fall victim to interpreting rather than analyzing. Okay, I think that might be the last one. Yeah. One final thought, though, is that given the current situation with COVID-19 and with 2020 having gone virtual and having only one rhetorical essay for the entire exam, I will say that AP did everything that they could to try to prevent plagiarism, try to prevent cheating, try to even the playing field. So many, many different prompts so that people weren't sharing their information. One of the biggest takeaways that I can see from this is that there's a lot of resources online that analyze the specific essays that AP has put out. And I can't imagine that there would be anything that you would find quickly on the internet that would be undetected by AP. Okay, they're going to be looking for any kind of evidence of you having tapped into outside resources. And so my very strong advice is do not do it. Okay, do not go to the internet to consult about what a specific essay is all about. Chances are if you do find something, they're going to be throwing terms at you that maybe you don't even know. And if you throw them into your essay and you can't defend them, that's going to be a huge red flag that you don't know what you're talking about, and you've tapped into an outside source and you're in over your head. Okay, so always use your own words, use your own thoughts. Don't go to the internet to try to analyze anything. Rely on what you've already got on your literary toolbox and take it as a word of caution. I'm not going to have the same kinds of resources to check for plagiarism that the College Board will have in May. and you're taking a huge gamble if you get into the habit of relying on that now. So I strongly, strongly encourage you to use only the sources that you have available to you. And it is open notes, so you're allowed to use sources like my cheat sheets that I give you to help guide you through it, but don't tap into the internet to analyze a specific essay. All right, that's what I had to share for you tonight, and I hope it's helpful to you. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything. Thanks.